All right, welcome back, friends, for another episode of the Enter Light Project. We're so glad that you have chosen to join us. Maybe you're on car ride to or from work. Maybe you're just taking a break out of your busy day. You could be listening to us while you exercise. Wherever you are right now, we're glad that you've chosen our content, and we hope that it'll be a blessing to you. And also, a little bit of fun as well. We all need a distraction from the craziness of our world. And what better way to do that than to talk about the things that we love, which, of course, for me, theology and sci-fi nerdy stuff. So several months ago, we embarked on a podcast for Interstellar, and
felt like years.
I felt like we got caught in the time warp slippage.
We got too close to Gargantua.
Yeah.
I went back and looked when I uploaded.
When did
that
we
was
record that?
September.
Golly.
It's now February. It was back in September.
Yeah, so real world issues crept in, such as work schedules, sickness,
Virtual teaching.
Christmas and
Getting
New
teeth pulled.
Years.
Getting
Teeth pulled.
You lost some wisdom there.
All kinds of stuff happened in between there, and
You can't take too much loss.
so we're back finally, keeping our word here to complete what we started. And we, of course, in the last episode talked about all the awesome things that we loved about Interstellar, the themes, the music, the sci-fi content,
Science of it.
yeah,
What
the
confused
directing.
us.
I mean, everything we could think of. Since then, we have all been blessed to be able to watch Tenet, which was an awesome Christopher Nolan movie,
yeah.
and hopefully we can dedicate some time to that in the future. But in this episode, we wanted to pivot and talk about the theological connections that we found in Interstellar, because we always like to not view our media just in a vacuum. We all come to it with a worldview, and of course, every form of entertainment has a worldview behind it, and it's good that we are able to parse through that, understand what are the morals and lessons being taught through the media that we enjoy. Now, as we do this, we should know that Christopher Nolan films are not really known for their spiritual themes, or maybe even they don't really have a moral lesson per se. A lot of his movies are very deep and very cerebral, and they're just more about the escape and the epic nature of the film. So spirituality or God are really not topics that he explores a lot in his content, not really part of the story that he tells. But Interstellar is such an ambitious and huge movie that it's impossible to miss those themes and how they get brought into the story, because it's so spectacular and so huge. So with a movie of this scope, dealing with as many complex themes as it does, we can certainly make some theological connections and point out ways, not only that there are similarities, but of course there are some differences there with the Christian worldview. So one of the first topics that I wanted to touch on, guys, is dystopian future. So obviously Interstellar is set in a dystopian future. Doug, you remember what that is, don't you? What's going on in Interstellar as the movie opens up?
As the movie opens up, Earth is dying.
Right.
It's ravaged by what they call blight,
Mm-hmm.
and it's killing all the crops. They can't grow enough food to support the population, and the governments keep trying to say they're diverting money to agriculture,
Mm-hmm.
and they've quit exploration. They quit looking up at the stars. They're just wondering about their place in the dirt instead of their place in the heavens.
Yeah, so there's a blight that's infected the crops, and there's not enough crops to feed the people. Basically, we're starving to death. There's been climate change. Yeah. Earth is becoming a dust ball.
And if that, the dust will...
I can't remember because it's been it's been since September, I guess, since I've seen it. But do they actually say what year this is supposed to take place
It's
in?
approximately 50 years from now,
50 years.
I believe. But you're right. They don't give a definite year. But if you go to places like IMDb or other articles that explain the movie, it does go into more detail as to when. But I want to say it's roughly 50 years from now.
And I think that was purposely done by Christopher Nolan, the way it was filmed, like in the old farmhouse.
2067.
Yeah,
Right here in the notes, boys.
Whoa, calm down.
That's about right.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's 4 years after First Contact. Oh, that's a different franchise. Sorry.
So, dystopian future, right? It's a common theme in so much future sci-fi, right? So we could all go around the circle and name a sci-fi franchise that is a dystopian future, right? You just mentioned one, Preston.
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games. What about you?
Terminator? Would that be one?
Of course.
Yeah, they're post-apocalyptic.
Yeah. Mad Max.
Battlefield Earth.
Yeah.
Keeps coming up. What about Waterworld?
Yeah. Now, my understanding of dystopian
It's a joke, people.
My understanding
joke.
of dystopian versus post-apocalyptic is dystopian, which is why I brought up Hunger Games, is a future like 1984,
Right.
where it's a
Equilibrium. Matrix.
Equilibrium is an ideal
RoboCop?
example. Well, it depends on, because it has to do with kind of a big government control
Right.
over
Big Brother.
Oh, yeah, and maybe kind of a semi-post-apocalyptic element too. But anyway,
You could probably lump like World War Z, Walking Dead. That's more post-apocalyptic.
right?
Yeah.
So we might be splitting hairs here, but these are important distinctions.
Oh, yeah.
Dystopian, we're doing it to ourselves.
Yeah.
We're destroying.
So like this is a really good distinction
Wall-E
here because
was a good movie for dystopian.
yeah, good for animated. So like when you're making these distinctions, like I wouldn't put Star Wars in the realm of sci-fi. I would put it in the realm of fantasy.
Yeah.
Just listen to how it starts out in a galaxy far, far away. That's like
Right.
Once Upon a Time, right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't put it in the realm of sci-fi. It does have elements of that, but it's fantasy.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and this is, and I preface by saying this is absolutely not to discredit anything, but Star Wars is not meant to rely on scientifically plausible elements, but that's because it's about the storytelling. And that's what makes a great fantasy, and that's what makes Star Wars great, is the fantasy, the storytelling, not relying on the scientific elements, which is what other franchises lean
The Princess
more so.
Bride. That was a good one.
But again, that's not to say that one is better than the other. It's more so it functions well because of that.
Yeah. Well, see, that's why Star Wars is in that sci-fi fantasy section.
Yeah.
And Star Trek is in
Yeah.
the sci-fi.
Right.
Well, we talked about this in the last podcast we did on Interstellar, how heavily they leaned on everything trying to be proven as a scientific fact or scientific realm of possibility we could achieve. So,
Yeah, so we don't mean to go down the rabbit trail, but that was fun anyway. But dystopian future, so it's a trope in all science fiction. It's fun to go down that road, and science fiction writers love to speculate about how the world will end and what our future might look like, whether that's the Book of Eli or Waterworld or Mad Max or whatever you're looking at. But so here's the theological tie-in. So the Bible predicts that there is a dystopian future, and it's all spelled out in the book of Revelation, chapter 6 through 19, outlining a 7-year period known as the tribulation, a period that's coming on the earth in which God will bring judgment to the inhabitants of the earth. There'll be a series of plagues, 21 separate judgments, actually, 7 seal, 7 trumpet, and 7 bowl judgments. You definitely don't want to be around here for that. But, of course, the tribulation, if you understand your end times and your prophecy correctly, it's a setup for the return of Christ when Jesus promises to come back to the earth, punish evil, do away with his enemies, and set up his kingdom of prosperity and peace for 1,000 years. And then after that, you've got a restored earth. But in sci-fi, as you explore it and you watch the movies and read the comics and so on, Earth is always destroyed by human negligence, right? It's World War III, or it's aliens, Independence Day, or it's natural disaster like Deep Impact or something like that, or a zombie apocalypse. But
2012.
but as you read the Bible and you begin to understand it, actually the one who's going to put an end to life on earth is God himself. He's the one that's actually going to bring judgment and wrath upon humanity. But the hope of that is that those in Christ will be able to see a new earth, and Christ is going to redeem all that's lost, and he's going to reverse the curse of sin and even death, and all the decay of sin will be removed from the earth. So that dystopian future, that's an interesting thing that sci-fi always plays with. But if you really want the true story, go to the Bible and read the prophetic books. Read Daniel, read Revelation, read Isaiah and Zechariah. That'll give you the big picture of where we're all going. And if you do follow Bible prophecy, I think it's very obvious to see where the positioning of things are right now. We're definitely getting close to that end time scenario. And I know people say, well, look, hey, you preachers have been talking about the return of Christ for 2,000 years. And yes, that's true, but we've never had a convergence of signs like we have had now at this point in history, where all these things are coming together. So the way to escape the dystopian future is to, of course, know Christ and love his gospel, be saved, and he promises that he can deliver us from the wrath that is to come. So there's dystopian future. Another great question that this wonderful movie Interstellar tries to answer is the question of, are we alone? That's a huge one in science fiction. Are we the only ones in the universe, or is there life out there somewhere? I think it was Carl Sagan who inspired Contact, another great science fiction movie. If you haven't seen Contact, that's an old one. You can track it down. Jodie Foster, Matthew McConaughey.
In the book, Doug, you sold me on this. The Science of Interstellar book, Kip Thorne mentions Sagan.
I think he may have advised on that a little bit, or been involved in it somehow.
Well, Sagan died a long time ago, but he was friends with Kip Thorne.
There you go.
And I do know a lot of Sagan, quote unquote, is a big influence on Kip Thorne's approach to astrophysics. So anyway,
so that Carl Sagan, he had a saying that, and I think he actually, this finds its way into Contact, but he said something to the effect of, the universe is a pretty big place, and if it's just us, it seems like an awful waste of space.
I think Matthew McConaughey says that.
He might actually say that in Contact. So the way that sci-fi always tries to answer that question is aliens. And we could all go through the list of movies that try and do that. Most recently was Arrival. Did you guys see Arrival?
Yes.
Yeah.
Arrival was awesome.
Great way of kind of answering that classic "Are we alone?" question. Contact, obviously, another good one.
McConaughey was in that one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Was he driving a Lincoln Navigator?
All right. And towards the end of Contact, I remember, it's been forever since I've seen it, but he talks about faith towards the end of it. He is
the voice of faith.
He's
in Contact, whereas Jodie Foster, she's the voice of science and reason.
He's the voice of faith in the White House, I believe, at the end in Contact. Yeah.
So all of those movies like Contact, they always try and pit science and reason, or reason and faith, against each other, like they're two incompatible things. But actually, they go together very, very well. You have to have both to have a complete worldview. But anyway, in Interstellar, the way that they answer the question, are we alone, is by posing the group known as
they,
quote, unquote, they, or the bulk beings, who we later discover towards the end of the movie are super intelligent versions of ourselves, humanity, set in the future, and somehow we've obtained the ability to transcend to the next dimension.
And we're trying to save ourselves.
Right. So,
in which I thought they were aliens.
Yeah, that's what I thought first too. But then they clear that up in the movie and they say, no, it's us.
Yeah.
Or Matthew McConaughey kind of clears it up, or maybe it's Tars in the wormhole clears it up. And one of them anyway.
It was kind of a joint effort.
Yeah.
Matthew McConaughey clears it up when he's in the Tesseract talking to Tars.
Mm-hmm. So Nolan's universe. That search for the quote-unquote higher power is really kind of ourselves. That's his answer to that. So the hope of salvation in the future is that they have to place faith in a group of people or a being set that they can't see and they don't know, right?
Right.
So even in this super scientific, super reasoning world of Interstellar, there is an element of faith because they have to trust the wormhole. They have to trust, Cooper has to trust the beings who created the Tesseract.
Right.
And all. So there is an element of faith in that that's required.
I mean, there's a little bit of faith you take to fly into a wormhole.
Exactly. Yeah. So, of course, you can see the obvious tie-in there with Christianity that just like they place faith in the bulk beings in the movie, Christianity says you place your faith in the God who is beyond space and time. He isn't limited to a box or our feelings or our senses. So in that way, you can kind of see a parallel there of answering that question, are we alone? Of course, Christianity answers that by saying we have been visited. We've been visited by God in the flesh when Jesus Christ came to the earth. So we have Emmanuel, God with us, which we hear a lot about at Christmas time. So there's that. You guys got anything you want to throw in on the are we alone question or are we alone issue?
Well,
I don't want to hog the mic.
oh no, oh, Doug, what were you going to say?
Something funny. I always
Go ahead, Doug.
Let's hear it.
I always think of the dude on the History Channel, the Ancient Aliens guy with the hair.
Gosh.
It's aliens, man.
They're here.
the guy with the hair that everybody wants.
Yes.
Yeah, that
I
one.
mean,
A cross between Doc Brown and Louis Tully.
Well,
think of aliens. I think of that guy. Like, whoa.
yeah, well, and I was just going to say, this is actually kind of backpedaling a little bit to where, Derrick, you were talking about, true, Interstellar doesn't openly or actively bring up the topic of faith. But I feel that when I watch it, it does leave some of those doors open, even though no, you don't really hear anyone or you don't see any kind of direct signal to it. But it's like leaving that door open to, like what we're able to do right here, have a faith-based discussion on something that is hugely immersed in science. And actually Nolan, I just remembered this when he was working with Hans Zimmer on the soundtrack, that was actually part of the reason they wanted an organ.
Yeah, I remember that in the special features.
And there's he wanted the organ Hans Zimmer wanted the organ for many reasons in the soundtrack. He wanted an acoustic organ for reasons, and they wanted it to be a church organ so that they could bring, maybe kind of in a subtle way, bring in the faith element to the movie. That way it kind of seasons the movie a little bit with that faith element, again, to leave that door open so that people like us can talk about it.
Well, like that movie on the planet with the water and the waves and the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with the vastness of space, it's an obvious
Radio
question,
Man,
are we
right?
alone? And then
Yeah.
Preston, I wish you had that
music
sound.
just opens that up.
The wave sound.
Oh, yeah, I need to program that in here.
All right, so are we alone? Dystopian future. Another thing that really is hit upon in the movie is the idea of salvation by science. So the savior, quote unquote, in Interstellar is what I would say is the triumph of the human spirit and science. So it's the intrepid spirit embodied by Cooper and Brand. It's the hard work of the number crunching done by Murph that saves humanity. So there is no...
I believe in science.
Believe only in science. You have not been baptized?
I told you I believe in science.
Not you, Libre.
It's another must watch.
So the salvation element in Interstellar is we kind of save ourselves, which is kind of a paradox and maybe even self-refuting. But so Cooper goes into the Tesseract. He gets the quantum data, which he then sends back to his daughter, Murph, codes that into the watch. And then she uses that to put into the formula so that they can...
overtake gravity.
Yes. So the way that they save them, it's basically self-salvation in a way.
Yes.
So there is no savior that comes, no deus ex machina, no God out of the machine, nothing like that.
Yeah. But what was cool about that part of the movie that you're talking about is they're using mathematical binary language, Morse code, all of those things. But when you hear Cooper talking about it, before all of that happens, he talks about love. How
and we're going to get to that.
Yeah. So anyway, just throwing that.
No, that's good.
Segue.
That's good. So I actually was kind of thinking about this the other day, how Interstellar is kind of almost like poses a new genesis for humanity. You could make the argument that humanity gets to start over again on a different planet.
Mm-hmm.
And Cooper and Brand are the Adam and Eve, and the embryos that she carries from the spaceship are like the new humanity. So she's, it closes and she's sitting on that planet to start over again.
The DNA
right?
bombs. Huh?
So it's kind of like a view of a secular view of a new beginning, or a new genesis, a new start. So now that stands in complete opposition to the Christian worldview, and sharp contrast, where salvation in the Christian worldview comes from God, who is outside of time and space, who came in the person of Jesus Christ, died on the cross for the sins of humanity, and then rose from the dead. So that's a departure point that we would look at and say, well, that's kind of like the secular view, and then that's completely opposed to the Christian view. You could make the argument that Cooper kind of is like a sacrificial type character in the movie. He willingly goes into the unknown. He goes into the black hole. He solves the equation. He transmits the data, comes out on the other side. So there's kind of an element there of death, rebirth. You could say
Moses coming down with the 10 Commandments.
All right. So, but in the Christian worldview, right, humanity can't save itself. We're utterly incapable of doing that. We're fallen. We're sinners. We're in need of a Savior. We need redemption, and so therefore, this salvation must come from outside our own realm. So you can see there that would be the departure point. But it's interesting to make those distinctions so that you can see how your worldview is different.
We can look at things openly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anybody got anything on that?
Just, I feel like what you just said kind of hits all those points there. But yeah, it's like watching them go to the new planet. They have another chance at life. They're able to kind of resettle, reinvent themselves. It's almost like you're looking at a metaphor of what our future.
And
is.
what's interesting now is what's going on in our world with SpaceX.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you've been watching the news and keeping up with Elon Musk and SpaceX, one of the things they're talking about now is a mission to Mars.
Is that the Space Force?
No,
that's different.
That's different.
That's different.
That's a government. It's a government regulated agency that's going to police Mars. Okay.
But no, seriously, the talk of having a colony and a base on Mars is a real dream. It's a real thing.
Buzz Aldrin is actually spearheading that.
And so Elon Musk, if you look at his statements about that, he said, basically we need to look at this as a life insurance policy for humanity in case we get hit by an asteroid or something, or a plague or whatever takes out humanity. We need to have a backup plan.
We don't need to have our eggs in one basket.
Yeah, that's exactly what he says. And so you can kind of see how that's an interesting segue to Interstellar, the idea that we can't put all of our hope here on the earth, which is exactly what Christianity says. You don't put your hope here on the earth because everything is susceptible to death and decay and all the problems here. Put your hope in God. Of course, that leads to the next one, good and evil, which, interestingly, if you watch Interstellar, there is no objective good and evil.
Except for maybe the school.
The what?
The school.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The moon landing was faked and all. Yeah.
So in a traditional science fiction, good and evil, the lines of good and evil are pretty clear, usually.
So you didn't think Matt Damon was
Well, we're going to get there.
Okay.
So they make a point in the
Jumping the
movie
gun.
that the two great enemies of the flick are time and the harshness of space. Do you remember that scene? Especially Michael Caine. He's all the time quoting that poem. I believe it's Dylan
Do
Thomas.
not go gentle.
Don't go
into
gentle.
that.
Rage, rage against the dying of the light. It's
Yeah.
kind of like a defiant protest against time
Mhm.
and the inevitability that time overtakes us all. And he even states at one point in the movie that he's not afraid of death. He says, "I'm afraid of time."
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
So, that being said, the movie kind of focuses on that sort of being the natural evil, whereas as they get closer to Gargantua, they feel the ravages of time and the slippage that it causes and how it fractures those relationships and all that.
Which is right up Christopher Nolan's wheelhouse when you talk about time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But there is a discussion, if you'll remember, that Bran and Cooper have at one point. And they do mention, is there such a thing as evil, kind of in one of their discussions on board. And there's a key line in there. And I can't remember if Matthew McConaughey says it or if Anne Hathaway says it. I think Matthew McConaughey says it. But he says, they talk about evil, and he says, the only evil is what we take with us. Do y'all remember that?
Yeah.
Okay, Preston is shaking his head. He
yeah.
says yes. So that brings in Dr. Mann, Doug, right?
Yes, he took that evil with him there. Yeah.
So that's what's so interesting when they get to the planet where Matt Damon is in cryonic sleep or
The
whatever.
ice planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not Hoth, but
I was literally about to say that. I was like, okay, no.
when they get there and they bring Matt Damon back to life, it's interesting that on this planet where they have a total population of, at that point, 4 people, right? You got the 3 who were on the mission, and you've got Matt Damon's character.
Yeah.
That with those 4 people, there's deception, narcissism, and Matt Damon tries to kill everybody. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't travel with Matt Damon. Tell him.
We're always going on these missions trying
Him
to
or
rescue
Tom
Matt
Hanks.
Damon.
Don't go anywhere with him.
But it's Matt Damon who becomes the antagonist or the foil, and he's really the one who becomes a picture of what humanity really is, left to their own devices.
And exactly, and because he doesn't see himself as evil.
Right.
He thinks he can return and save the people on earth.
So the thing is, that's an interesting connection point with Christianity is Christianity will say that humanity's great problem isn't environmental, it's not economic, it's not poverty or whatever label you might want to put on it. The great problem with humanity is our own hearts. We're broken, we're sinful, we're fallen. We're capable of great good, great courage, great sacrifice, but at the same time we're also capable of great evil. We're the race that has produced Hitler and Mother Teresa, right? So you see that difference in the characters. Matt Damon, who is so absorbed with his mission that he thinks he's doing right, even if it means killing everybody
there.
else, right?
Yeah.
To get the mission accomplished. But it's interesting that even though they go to a brand new world where there hasn't been a single human being, the evil that comes out in that world is the evil that they take with them, which is inherent in the human condition. And Matt Damon is the picture of that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't until, because it's funny, like, just you saying that, Derek, changes my whole perception of that scene, because this whole time my perception of that part of the movie was Matt Damon's character, Dr. Mann, had been through extreme conditions, was out on his own all that time, and then just put into cryo sleep without waking himself up. And my perception was, well, gosh, this guy has just been messed up so bad psychologically that this whole situation just drove him crazy, and That's why he's doing what he's doing. And then it didn't even dawn on me to make that connection with what Cooper said about bringing evil with you.
Mm-hmm. And here's the crazy thing about that, to back that up. So early on, when Cooper first discovers the NASA place where,
secret base.
The secret base, yeah. And they have all the pictures all along the wall of the people who were part of the Lazarus mission, the people who went to the wormhole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they talk in there in that scene about Dr. Mann. And they explain that, he's the best of us.
Mm-hmm.
He's the most intelligent, so he was like the top tier of humanity, the number one guy that we could send on that mission. And yet when they get there and they discover that his heart is totally twisted and he's more machine now than man, twisted and evil.
You think about that now.
Nicely put.
You think about that now, Dr. Mann, when he was there, he'd already dismantled his TARS.
Yeah.
And he had it set up as a booby trap for anybody that messed with him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, he was already, ain't no telling how many years that had been since he put himself, because it looked like his TARS was pretty bad, been deteriorated. So that had been set up long before.
So here's another crazy connection, and you guys can,
Get it?
You guys can shoot me down if you think this is just totally insane. But we're in Nolan verse here, okay? So what other character from the Nolan verse parallels Dr. Mann, who is the best of us, and yet is corrupted and becomes evil? You know who it is? Harvey Dent. Hit that button.
Goodness,
Hit that button. Harvey Dent, right? Two-Face from Dark Knight. In fact, the Joker or somebody makes the reference in the movie that he's the best of us.
No, that's actually Batman says that.
Batman says that. You're the best of us.
He was wanting to take up the mantle of Batman.
And so that's why the Joker targeted him, to show that I could even take the best and corrupt him and turn him toward evil.
Was an example of a character that went through something horrible.
Yeah.
But it took that event to bring that sort of thing out, to bring out that evil and to change that person.
So let me ask you this: did Matt Damon? Did he have other people with him when he went to that planet?
No,
he was all alone.
Entirely by himself.
Okay, well then that completely makes sense. I didn't.
All he
know,
had was his robot.
I didn't know if he had other people with him and he wound up killing him because he went crazy.
Each of those missions was one. It was a one-way, one person.
The one-way ticket.
And
really
interesting how they use the number 12. 12 of them.
Oh, yeah. Lazarus,
Lazarus mission. There's a biblical element there.
The apostles.
12 disciples. Yeah. These are their disciples. They are sending out.
I don't know if Nolan meant to make that connection, but that's really good.
I wouldn't be surprised, but yeah.
So he talked about when they called it Lazarus, he's like, that's a bleak. He's like, well, Lazarus rose from the dead.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's the whole point, is they're trying to bring humanity back from the brink of death. And then, of course, when they discover Dr. Mann, they literally do bring him out of cryosleep. So it's like a picture of coming out of death. But they find out that he's not their savior.
You should have known something was wrong with him when he destroyed the only thing he could talk to.
And here's another crazy association I was thinking about between Harvey Dent and Dr. Mann. So they're both the best of us, quote unquote, who become corrupted and turn toward evil. But they both have their own twisted sense of morality. Mm-hmm. They both, in their minds, think that what they are doing is right, even if it means taking life. So for Harvey Dent, his morality is what? The coin flip.
Yeah.
That's what determines right and wrong.
Anton
Chigurh, same thing.
Oh, man.
Right?
Yeah.
No Country for Old Men.
Yep, flip the coin.
It's the coin flip. It's, what does he say? It's totally fair and random. And
you're when he has you flip the coin, he has you call it, and like the guy that asks, well, what are we calling for? And he says, everything.
Everything.
Great
scene.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We got to do No Country for Old Men.
We
one
will.
day. That's just.
I'm gonna have to watch it. I haven't seen it in forever.
Movie's so
It's been a while
awesome.
since I've seen it.
But Anton Chigurh, right? Harvey Dent, kind of the same sense of morality.
Sugar.
Where they use the coin flip, right?
Yep.
And they let chance, so-called, decide. Well, Dr. Mann, he's so sold out on the mission of science and the next step, that the ends justify the means, so to speak, for him, which shows you that in both of these moral systems that they have, they don't work, right? Because people end up getting hurt that way.
Right, correct. Either way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say because he almost winds up killing Matthew McConaughey, and then also he kills himself.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they told him, don't do it.
Yeah, because he was so bound and determined, and he had convinced himself that he was doing the right thing, just ignoring the possible consequences.
So I thought that was a really brilliant thing that Nolan put in there, that there wasn't a mustache twirling henchman villain out there that was, wanting to take over the world or anything like that you would normally see in a science fiction. I mean, really the evil is within us.
Yeah.
Which totally fits in with Christian theology, that yes, we are the problem.
We brought it with us.
Last thing that we want to touch on as we close this second episode is the idea of love. And I know that Preston touched on this a little bit, but in the movie, love is the other force along with gravity that transcends time, right? So
Cooper identifies that in the Tesseract. So he equates love as the fifth dimension.
yes.
And
So
something that connects.
yeah,
Yes.
so
One
Anne
to the
Hathaway
other.
has this great line in the movie. She says, "Love isn't something we invented. It's observable, powerful. It has to mean something. Love is the only thing we're capable of perceiving that transcends the dimensions of time and space. Maybe we should trust that, even if we can't understand it."
Yeah.
Great line, and kind of one of the whole heart of the movie right there. That's the whole emotional core of the movie. And Christopher Nolan's characters always get criticized by people for saying that they're emotionally detached. But I disagree. I think that was a great line, and the connection between father and daughter, between Cooper and Murph, and the love that they have for each other is what the whole movie is built around, right?
Well, when she was giving that speech about love, she was actually trying to entice him to go to a different planet instead of man's planet.
Because she had a love interest in
right.
the fella
Yeah.
on the other planet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Edmonds, yeah.
Edmonds, which she does go to that planet later on in
Yes.
the movie.
And it turns out to be a better place than the one they went
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
But the love between the father and the daughter, Murph and Cooper, is the connecting point. That's the connective tissue of the whole movie, because the whole reason that she goes back to get the watch is because that's an artifact left over from the relationship, the love that she had with her dad. He gave it to her.
Gave it to her
Remember,
before he
he said,
left, yeah.
when I come back, we'll be the same age.
Yeah.
And he transmits the quantum data into the watch,
Into
which
the
she
second
needs
hand
to
of the watch.
open the formula. So that's the whole bit there with the love transcending time.
And
And
it's
it's-
like Morse code, wasn't it? Sort of.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
It was
right.
binary, wasn't it?
Binary?
Wasn't it binary?
Yeah, well, I think he sent it in Morse code, and I want to say the equation was in binary form. I
Well,
could be completely wrong, but that's how I remember.
He tried to do Morse when he knocked the books out,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't work.
and you're okay.
He
You're
went
right,
back to
Doug.
binary.
Yeah.
That's right.
So what's cool about that is that, we touched a little bit earlier on salvation by science, but really, if you want to go deeper, I would say that the source of salvation in the movie is love. It's the love between the father and the daughter.
Mhm.
But here's the thing. If you are in a universe that's purely materialistic, purely physical, where there is no God, you have no explanation for love. Because if we're just all products of time and matter and chance, and we're just a random blip caused by evolution, survival of the fittest is the name of the game, then love doesn't make that love. Where does it come from? You can't really explain it. So as Dr. Brand kind of points out in the movie, there has to be more than just social utility involved with love.
Well, that's how the movie ends too. Cooper flying to meet up with Brand because
Right.
he realizes he does love her.
Yeah. So you can look at all of those things that humanity is capable of: compassion, self-sacrifice, grief. All right, all these things that are accompanied with because we love people and we love others. And that is one way that I think that the movie really resonates with the Christian message, is that love does transcend time, because we know the Bible says that God is love. God is the source of love. He's the reason why we love and can be loved, is because we're created in His image. And God has always lived in a community of love. The Father loves the Son, and then the Holy Spirit in that community of the Trinity, where there is eternal love and eternal fellowship. And, of course, the cross is the greatest message of love, that God demonstrated His love for us by giving His Son. And so that message transcends time. That's why the gospel is always going to be relevant, no matter what age or what geography or wherever you are in the world, whatever time in the world you are, because we all have that need and that desire to love and be loved, and to know that we're cosmically valuable by a creator and that He's poured out His love for us. I think, to me, that is really a huge thing that the movie hits upon. Mm-hmm. May have not been intentional by Christopher Nolan, may have, but to me, I see that's where a great intersecting point is.
They hit the mark
with
on it.
Christianity. Yeah.
When at least from the standpoint of just love in general, from one person to another, I think at least that part, I think, might have been intentional for Nolan, because going back to the soundtrack, when he was collaborating with Hans Zimmer, when he was first wanting him to sketch the main theme, he didn't tell Zimmer anything other than, I just want you to sketch a musical theme about a father's relationship with his son. And that was
yeah, that's right. I remember you saying
I remember
that.
And that's all Hans Zimmer knew. And Nolan did that for two reasons. Number one, he knows that Hans Zimmer has a son himself, and that would help with his inspiration to write the music. And then two, he wanted to kind of set Zimmer on kind of an alternate track, because it was after Hans Zimmer wrote that sketch that Nolan told him, well, this is actually about a father's relationship with his daughter, and this is about space travel, and here's all the stuff. And then Hans Zimmer's response was, well, I wrote this theme about a father and son, but now I need to do all this because this is what you're wanting in the movie. And then Nolan said, no, this is perfect, because now we have the heart of the movie in the music.
Yeah, exactly.
So you think the movie is essentially a love story with the backdrop of science?
Yes and no.
Yeah. Yeah.
The love element is the emotional core of the movie. If you don't have the love element, you lose the punch. Like the whole reason for what Cooper is doing
It's for love.
is for love.
Yeah.
He loves his family. He loves his kids.
Like the antagonist and protagonist, love's on one side, science is on the other. Is love going against science?
Well, so you could look at Dr. Mann and say, well, he doesn't have any love in his life, right? He has no family. He has no attachments. The only thing that he loves, only thing he loves is himself and the mission.
He has nothing to fight for.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, because that was one of the guidelines for all of those astronauts to be put out there.
Yeah.
No family
no
ties.
attachments.
Yeah.
And
Which Bran can't do, because she gets attached to the other
To
fellow on the
Edmonds,
planet.
and then
Edmonds.
her, I think part of it too, her relationship with her father up to that certain
That
point in
point.
the movie.
Yeah.
And you think about that too. Man was talking to Cooper about his relationship to his children. Is he going to see his children in the last few seconds of his life when he goes to kill
Oh
them?
yeah.
Yeah. So, no, that's a great point, Doug. And I would say that love is what characterizes everything that Cooper does in the movie. He's
doing it for the love of his children.
Yeah, that's what he's motivated. That's why he's driven to do all this, because he's trying to create that better future. He's trying to save his children along with, of course, the rest of humanity.
Like the original, you think about the original Lazarus missions, think about it that way. They went out without having something to fight for. The rest of them, and Cooper, he goes out with everything to lose, everything to fight for.
Yeah.
And they throw that back and forth in the movie where like Dr. Brand, she was having a discussion with Cooper at one point in the movie how his relationship with his kids could be clouding his judgment.
Yeah.
And then there are some other discussions that are kind of the other way with that. Well, you don't have any ties, so this could be clouding your judgment, kind of thing. But that conversation is what.
So the interesting thing here is the initial thought is that if I don't have attachments, it will make me stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas if I have attachments, it will make me weaker.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But it's actually the opposite, right?
Yes.
You have to have the love, because love is what motivates you to do the heroic thing, to make the sacrifice, to push a little bit further.
Yeah.
It actually makes you stronger, not weaker.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, this may sound silly, but it makes me think of the saying, do what you love and you never work a day in your life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you think of doing something that you love, whether it's for someone or something else greater than yourself or whatever, that right there, I know for me personally, can always be a huge motivating factor to want to succeed at that and do my best at that sort of thing and be successful.
And of course, the parallels to Christianity are so evident that it's love that motivates Christ to leave heaven and to come and give his life for people that will hate him and spit on him and treat him like dirt.
Yeah.
And it's love that caused him to do that. And
when you
because
share
it's pure love.
and when you share the salvation story with someone who doesn't know Christ, I think for many of us who at least have that concept in our mind, it's almost like it could go without saying, where you talk about why Jesus went to the cross. For many of us, it could go without saying, oh gosh, well, that was such a selfless thing to do. The only explanation could be that he loves us.
Mm-hmm.
He loved us enough to do that sort of thing, to go to the cross, to endure all of that stuff. And I mean, yeah, that's part of how we explain it to others who may not know, whether we're explaining it to children coming up in Sunday school. You know, we talk about why that he loves us and why he did all of that.
John 3:16.
Yeah, exactly.
For God so loved the world. So, to me, you can see the differences from Christian worldview in the themes of the movie, but also I can see great parallels in it as well. So, we spent 2 episodes doing a deep dive into Interstellar, and I don't know if we explored it all, but it was a lot of fun. We had fun.
Oh, amen.
I hope that we didn't bore you guys to death out there. If you're still listening.
So, Derrick, you say you could do a 3rd episode? That's how deep you could dive.
We could always draw something out of there.
Well, I'm already predicting that when we get to Tenet, it'll probably be 2 as well. That's going to be my coin toss right there.
So this
We still got to do that Donnie Darko one.
Doug's definitely
we will
campaigning
get
for
there
that. We've
too.
got a long list, folks.
We're gonna do Man of Steel.
Man of Steel.
Yeah.
We got Matrix.
Maybe we
we've
could do
got-
a poll on our social media.
Hey, that is if we have more than 5 fans.
Hey,
Our
we'll
2
get 'em.
listeners, yeah.
We'll get them, other than our wives.
So we've had a lot of fun, and we hope that you have as well. We're going to be back. Hopefully it won't be 6 months, but we will be back with more episodes, more content. So don't go too far. We'll keep you updated. We pray that you're blessed, that you're healthy, and that if you don't know Christ, that you do find how full of love and mercy and grace he is, and how he can transform your worldview and your life. So thanks for listening. We'll be back sometime soon with another episode of the Inner Light Project.